Welcome to Lighthouse. Today we're diving into a concerning internet phenomenon that has affected many lives, the dangerous world of internet challenges. Today we have several guests who've agreed to share their personal experiences with internet challenges. Their stories serve as warnings and reminders of how quickly online interactions can turn dangerous in real life. Our first guest is Stephen from Minnesota, who had a life-changing experience that ultimately led him down a better path. Stephen, thank you for joining us today. Could you share your experience with our listeners?
I had quite the troubled youth until very recently. And I think this internet challenge, while threatening my life, actually helped me become a better person. There's a certain respect you have out of fear. I graduated high school at the start of 2018. That year, I didn't have a job, and I got into screaming matches with my parents every other day. They were tired of me. And at one point, I even heard them discussing kicking me out. My dad was on my side, though. Luckily, and told my mother that they couldn't do anything until I had stable income. But I was an idiot. No matter how many interviews they set up for me, how many people they talked to get me in, I didn't show up. I didn't contact anyone. I decided that getting a job was lame, and I was not about to do what other people told me to do. I had this thing in my head where being told what to do really pissed me off. But that's what makes this so weird. Because being told what to do is the entire basis of this challenge. Toward the end of 2018, I heard about the challenge. I saw that stupid picture of the creepy face. Any normal person knows that it's fake, but it wasn't the creepy sculpture that you had to worry about. It was the challenge itself. Deranged people began to claim they were the character. They would post their numbers online, find any way to share their numbers, and those who were daring enough to contact them would follow the challenge, which led to the person pretending to be this character giving them objectives. I had even heard that a couple of kids got hurt. I even heard about a little boy in Argentina who died. So while the monster itself was obviously fake, people were using it like a mask to accomplish their twisted deeds. But still, the people who went through with this stuff are partially to blame sometimes. I mean, most of them don't actually think it was that character they were talking to, right? As for me, that was my thought process. And being extremely bored and extremely angry at my parents at all times, I figured the one person I could listen to was a fake internet character, at least for a quick and cheap thrill. Browsing for the challenge, I found several numbers, about 24 to be exact. I compiled a list and texted each one from top to bottom until someone replied. Someone who wanted to play. It took me about an hour to go through all the numbers, as many that did reply were aggravated, saying that I had the wrong number and that I was creepy because I started my text by saying that I wanted to play the challenge. Anyway, the person who did reply, the one who did pretend to be this character, seemed just as excited as I was. Their first reply was, "Are you ready to get started?" I replied with a simple yes and awaited my first task. I was astonished at how quickly we got started. The first one was to rob the convenience store nearby, a 7-Eleven. I was hesitant at first. I had never done anything that bad, but I was not in a good state of mind. Again, I was a very rebellious teenager at the time, and I thought that even if I got caught, it would stick it to my parents, letting them know that I despised them and that I was my own person. Yeah, I wasn't very smart.
That sounds like a really dangerous first request. What happened next?
So I grabbed my coat and I headed out, not telling my father where I was going. Even though he asked, I walked down to the local 7-Eleven. When I walked inside, I saw the clerk behind the counter. He was on his phone and seemed bored. After a quick glance to see that they weren't looking, I walked into the back and looked around for a while. What would I take? Certainly something that would fit in my pocket. So I swiped a pair of sunglasses that I liked and put them in my pocket. I was about to leave when I thought I couldn't just leave after walking in. That was too suspicious. So I grabbed a Snickers and went to the front to pay for it. The clerk didn't say a word. I was on my way soon with my stolen pair of sunglasses, and my stomach felt sour. That didn't have the rush that I thought it would. I actually felt kind of bad. As I was walking down the street, just wanting to get away from that 7-Eleven, I received another text from the person that said, "That doesn't count." What? How did they know what I did? Or were they just bluffing, figuring that I didn't do it? But the timing was right after I was done. Surely I was being watched, but from where? I texted back, "How do you know?" But their reply was the next task. and it was just as oddly specific to my current surroundings. The girl with the orange coat. Follow her. What? I looked up and glanced across the street. Lo and behold, there was a woman in her mid-20s, it appeared. She had an umbrella, as it had been raining recently. And she did in fact have an orange coat. Dumbfounded and intimidated by this person's knowledge of where I was, I quickly did as I was told, crossing the street and matching her pace, following her at about 10 yards behind. The moment I hit that same sidewalk, though, she had already glanced at me.
That must have been terrifying for both of you. Did you continue following her?
After about 5 minutes of following her every turn, causing her to speed up out of panic, I was again feeling nervous. I texted the number and asked how long I had to do this. Until she makes it home, was the reply. Fine. I wanted to stop and go home, but I couldn't. If they knew where I was there a chance that they would hurt me if I stopped? I didn't want to take the chance, so I continued. I can tell the woman was very noticeably afraid of me. She was texting someone on her phone in a panic, constantly glancing back to see that I was still there. I made sure that I didn't get any closer, but after rounding several blocks and still following her, I covered my face with my hood the entire time. I didn't want her to remember me after this. Eventually, we made it to a suburban neighborhood. It looked pretty similar to mine. I couldn't help but feel a bit homesick. After a few more minutes of awkward, silent following, the woman ran up some steps to a house and basically jumped inside. I could hear her audibly deadbolt the door. I continued walking on, pretending that I hadn't just been following her. After several blocks, I sighed. I was relieved that that was over. I texted that number and told them that I was done, and to try to see if it would appease them. I said at the end of that maybe we could play another time. That didn't work. "We're not done," the reply said. "The bridge. Go now." And suffer it something like shout. Breathing heavily, I listened. I do not know why I couldn't just turn and go home, but I felt like if I did, I would never make it back. I went to the nearby bridge, one that stood about 125 feet over the water. I received another text the moment I arrived. "Walk on the rails," it requested. "Is that it?" I asked. "Sure. After this, you can go home," they said. Fine. I got on the rails and I began to walk and balanced myself. I was honestly praying that someone would stop and see me, that they'd get out of their car and tell me to get down, or even force me down, and maybe they could take me home, or at least to safety. But with my luck, no one was even driving by that night. I missed the warmth of my bed. I missed just laying there, trying to stay up as long as possible with my eyelids slowly falling. I made it to about 3/4 of the bridge. I kept checking my phone, hoping to get that text saying that I was done. It was easy to balance on the rail as they were pretty wide, so I wasn't worried about falling in. I stopped and decided to text them. "Is that enough?" I said, and I got a text that read, "Sure." I smiled. I locked my phone, and just as I was turning to get down, someone pushed me.
Oh my God. Someone was actually there on the bridge with you?
Falling that distance, it felt like I was going in slow motion. I was falling back first. I remember looking up, seeing nothing more than a hooded silhouette, walking away from the bridge, and I think they laughed.
I had never felt so scared and so stupid. In a few seconds' time, I hit the water. All I remember was that the sudden splash felt more like I landed in concrete, but in an instant, everything went black. I woke up completely drenched in water. I was next to the same river. There was an old man standing over me. He appeared to be homeless, and he also appeared to be panicking. He was wet too.
Apparently, he had pulled me from the water and had actually seen me jump off the bridge. But I know I was pushed, but I couldn't think about that now. I was in so much pain. My back felt like it had exploded, and the back of my head was oozing red. When I was taken to the hospital, I learned that I had a burst fracture in one of my vertebrae. I was in the hospital for 3 months, and it took me a very, very long time to recover. I had to have physical therapy, and I didn't have feeling in that part of my back for a while. The doctors said I was lucky that I could even walk, as often vertebrae damage could lead to spinal cord injuries, which could cause paralysis. God, I felt like an idiot. I basically let someone turn me into a criminal, a creep, and nearly a paraplegic. But I learned my lesson.
That's an incredible story of survival. What happened after your recovery?
As of April 2019, I can walk on my own. I got a local clerical job. I began volunteering at the homeless shelter, inspired by that man that saved me. And I swear to God, I'm going to turn my life around. One thing I know I'll never do again, though, is a challenge like that. And I urge all of you, whenever a new dangerous internet challenge arises, ignore it. Because there are some sick people out there who will use it as an excuse to hurt others. I nearly lost my life.
Thank you for sharing such a powerful story, Stephen. What really stands out to me is how this horrific experience became a turning point in your life. The man who saved you clearly made an impact, inspiring your volunteer work. Your journey reminds us that even after making dangerous decisions, there's always a path to redemption and growth. What would you say to others who might be tempted by similar online challenges?
I tell them it's absolutely not worth it. These challenges aren't about fun. They're about manipulation. There are people out there who use these challenges to hurt others, and I was nearly paralyzed because of it. My advice is to ignore these challenges completely.
Powerful advice. Thank you again for your courage in sharing this story. Now we'll hear from our next guest, Evan from Canada, who had his own frightening experience. Evan, please tell us what happened to you.
After school, my mom and dad would be busy at work, and I hated staying at home because it was boring. I didn't have any game systems, and my parents thought that TV rotted your brain. So even though we had a TV, it didn't have cable or anything like that. I had always been that kid that didn't like to read either, except for manga and comic books. That being the case, I would often be found in town at the comic book shop. I could play Magic with the guys there, check out the new comics, or even read a manga without buying it. I know it's wrong, but it helped to pass the time. It was an oddly warm day. I had gone to the comic shop, and I was told by my parents that they would both be working late. They actually worked together at the same place. How that was allowed, I don't know. Anyway, I had around double the time to spare, so I went to the comic book shop and started to read some manga. This would have been a good opportunity to finish a series had it not been for my bowels. I quickly ran to the bathroom to do my business, and when I was there, that's when I saw it, something that initially had me laughing. It was a phone number followed by the word Momo. No way, I thought. This is just a prank. I quickly put it into my phone and texted it myself. I started with, "I'm texting you Momo for a good time." Surprisingly, I got a reply in seconds reading, "Are you ready to play?" I smirked. "Sure," I said. This was going to be dumb, I thought, as I finished up and washed my hands.
So this started as something you found amusing. What happened next?
I checked out a new message that I got from the number. There was a date and time and an address, followed by "stand by the pile." All right, that's really specific, but I replied that I would do it. 9:30 p.m. at that address, next to the pile. Got it. By 9:30, the comic book shop had closed half an hour ago. I was just at a dollar store trying to pass the time. My parents wouldn't be home until 10 hours, and the address wasn't too far away, so I could make it and be home quickly enough. When 9:25 rolled around, I began walking a couple of blocks down. I was at the address. I didn't know this before, but that place was under construction. It appeared to be a new several-story building. It was dark, and the street was pretty quiet. So I stepped over the orange cones and under the yellow tape. No one seemed to be there, so I could definitely do this without getting in trouble. I walked slowly in, trying to be careful not to fall in some hole or something, or get impaled by rebar. A pile, I thought. What pile were they talking about? The only thing I saw close to a pile was a stack of bricks. Surely that's what they were talking about. I went over, and oddly enough, next to the stack of bricks, there was a perfectly clean chair, one that looked like it came from an old school. And then I received a text. "Sit," it said. While that was extremely creepy, I smirked again and sat down. I waited for a while, not sure what was going to happen. I was expecting some guy or a couple of dudes to come up and scare me. It was a prank, after all. That's what I thought it was. But nothing happened. Anything could have happened given how dark and late it was, and we were alone. I'll admit it, it was a bad idea to come out there, but nothing happened. By 9:50, I needed to get home, and I was already bored sitting there. So I texted saying that I was done and that I'd see them later, as if they were some old friend. I got up, took a step forward, when there came a sudden, deafening crash. "Find me!" Something caught my leg, and I fell forward in pain. I yelled out and turned around on the ground. I was on my back now, facing where the chair used to be. But now all that was there was a massive pile of concrete or cement, which had apparently fallen from some height and crushed the chair, nearly disintegrating it. The corner of the concrete slab had caught my leg, forming a deep gash that needed about 13 stitches. I got up, limping, and ran out of the construction site. When I made it home, worried that I'd be in trouble and still bleeding like crazy, my parents were already there. When they saw my leg, they gagged and had me taken to the hospital right away. On the way there, I got a text from that number, the last one I ever got. It read, "Low A." I couldn't be more mad at this person and at myself for listening to them. Whatever you do, don't partake of these internet challenges, because I nearly lost my life to it. That concrete slab would have completely crushed me if I had stayed in that chair just seconds longer.
That's absolutely terrifying, Evan. You were incredibly lucky that you decided to get up when you did. What strikes me about your story is how something that seemed like just a harmless prank could have been deadly. These challenges exploit curiosity, especially when we're bored or seeking excitement. Thank you for sharing this warning with our listeners. Our next guest has a different perspective. This story comes from someone who experienced how these challenges can impact entire families.
I'm 14 years old and live in the UK with my brother and parents. Let me tell you this extremely creepy experience I had. It started on a Friday. Now in my secondary school, this internet challenge was a big thing that was going around, and everyone was always talking about it. I thought it was pretty sketchy, and a friend of mine kept telling me that people were talking about it to him every day to the point that he had a nightmare about it. It was chaos. I was in science class sitting next to my friends, and of course they were talking about it. I joined in on the conversation, as science class was boring as usual. The teacher was ill that day, so we had a substitute. My friends Kyle and Tom. Tom was saying that they should do this challenge at his house today. Just as I was going to say that that was a bad idea, Kyle said the opposite and said that it sounded fun. I was like, this stuff ain't real. And they stared at me and said, it is. I was like, fine, I will come around yours today, Tom. I wanted to see how real it was and to see what they got themselves into. Science class passed by, and we were soon going to lunch. I grabbed my lunch bag and sat in the hall, thinking about this challenge. I figured that if it was real, it was going to be quite dangerous.
So your friends had convinced you to join them in this challenge. How did things progress from there?
After a few more lessons passed, it was time to go home. I texted my mom saying I'm going to go to a friend's house for a while, and she was okay with it. We walked over to Tom's, and on the way, Tom explained what kind of demands we might get. He had heard stories about people drinking bleach all the way to cutting off parts of yourself. It was horrifying. I can't believe they wanted to be a part of that. We arrived at Tom's house, and we went upstairs. The house was incredibly warm, so I took off my hoodie. He showed me how to get started, saying that we just had to join a group online, and this made me think that the demands themselves weren't from the challenge character, but simply people who roleplayed and wanted to see what others would do. Anyway, we joined a group, and at that point, I was starting to shake, but my friends seemed excited. The way the group worked, it seemed that someone in the group with a profile picture of the challenge character would ask questions or post demands. They varied greatly from simply waking up at a certain time, and the worst we saw was ending your own life. Of course, I didn't want to take it that far. My mouth was beginning to dry, so I exited the room for a while to grab a drink of water. The moment I got downstairs, it started to rain outside, and the next thing I knew, my friends were screaming. I ran back to the room to see Tom's mom in the doorway checking on them. They were laughing now and said that they were fine. I walked back in and asked what was going on. They said that someone was texting them on WhatsApp now, and that it was time to start. I looked at the app on his phone, seeing that same old, creepy, disturbing picture, and a message that scared the living crap out of me. It read, "I know where you live, Tom. Are you ready to play?"
That's incredibly unsettling. Did it get worse from there?
Then they received another message, which was Tom's address. This even freaked Tom out, but it got worse when the first request was for Tom to unlock his front door. Tom, with a wicked smile on his face, listened. He went downstairs, unlocked the door, and came back up, but I was done. This was too weird, too creepy. I decided to call it a day and go back home. I waved Tom goodbye and walked home, but as I left, I looked back, and I swear I saw someone in a window looking at me. Someone that I thought was his dad at first, but soon realized they were wearing a mask. I quickly ran home and called Tom, but he did not answer. And at school the next day, he didn't show up. I'm not sure what happened to Tom, but I haven't seen him since. Surely if something happened to him, I would have been told. There would have been an uproar at school, right? Maybe he moved and didn't tell anyone. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'll believe.
Thomas, that's incredibly unsettling. The way these challenges can escalate from online curiosity to potential real-world danger is exactly why we need to have these conversations. The fact that someone knew your friend's address shows how vulnerable we can be online. I hope your friend is safe, and thank you for sharing this warning. Our final guest today has a brief but important story about group decision-making and peer pressure.
A few months ago, my friends and I were having a sleepover. One of my friends said, "We should do this internet challenge." I had never heard of it before that. He looked at me with a smile and said to Google it. So I did. Apparently someone pretending to be this character or claiming to be them would text you or call you and tell you to do often dangerous things. The challenge is to obey these commands. We started doing it, and this supposed person would text back every 5 minutes. No sooner, no later, no matter what we did. The first request was to come meet her. After that, we received our own address in the text saying that she could come to us if she chose, but instead sent a picture of the park near the house and said that we could meet there.
That sounds like a very dangerous situation already. What did you all decide to do?
As kids, we made a very stupid decision and decided to go, but we did at least think to get weapons. When we made it to the park, it was 10:00 at night. We waited for about half an hour, but no one showed up, and we were beginning to think that we got pranked, until suddenly, we heard the loudest scream. It sounded like a woman screaming in pain, and the next thing we knew, several silhouettes appeared in the nearby woods, walking slowly towards us. We ran all the way back to the house, and I was personally thinking, there's no way this was actually happening. This challenge character wasn't real, but that game was, and who knows what they were going to do when they got to us. I'm sure they were simply trying to scare us kids, but still, going out there to the park at night was a terrible idea. Looking back, we put ourselves in serious danger. We had no idea who was on the other end of those messages. It could have been anyone, someone who wanted to rob us, hurt us, or worse. And we just willingly gave them our location and then went to meet them in a dark, isolated place. When I think about what could have happened if we hadn't run away when we did, it makes me feel sick. I've never told my parents about this. They would have been furious. But I think about it a lot, and I've never done anything like that again. That night taught me to be much more careful about who I communicate with online and to never ever agree to meet strangers, especially not in a dark park at night. Those silhouettes in the woods, I sometimes still have nightmares about them. I don't know who they were or what they wanted from us, but I'm just grateful we all made it back home safely.
Thank you for sharing that experience. What stands out in your story is how group dynamics can lead to risky decisions that individuals might not make on their own. Going to a park at night to meet strangers is something most people would recognize as dangerous, but in a group setting, especially among young people, these normal safety barriers can break down. I'm glad you all made it home safely. To our listeners, these stories remind us that while the internet connects us in amazing ways, it also creates opportunities for manipulation and harm. What begins as curiosity or a desire to be part of something can quickly turn dangerous. Parents, please talk with your children about internet safety and the pressure to participate in challenges. Young listeners, remember that your safety is always more important than any online trend.
If someone is pressuring you to do something that feels wrong or dangerous, please talk to a trusted adult. And remember, true courage isn't found in taking unnecessary risks to impress others. It's found in standing your ground and making choices that keep you safe. Thank you for listening to Lighthouse. We'll be back next week with more stories that illuminate the path forward. Until then, stay safe and be the light others need in dark times.